You ever felt like life handed you the short end of the stick, then snapped it in half for good measure? Well, let me tell you about the year I turned 70. My husband died, left me with nothing but a locked phone, and my own children treated me like yesterday's leftovers. But what happened next? Oh, honey, you won't believe it. What if the one thing your late husband left you held the power to change your entire life, but you had no idea how to unlock it? Stay with me because what happened on my 70th birthday will leave you speechless. When my husband Richard passed away, I thought the worst part would be missing his laugh or his terrible attempts at cooking. He used to make this famous chili that could clear a room faster than a fire alarm. I thought I'd miss the way he'd wink at me across the dinner table, or how he'd always forget where he put his glasses, only to find them perched on his head. But as it turns out, the real pain wasn't in the empty seat at the table or the silence in the house. No, the real pain came from my own children. Yes, the very same ones I raised on mac and cheese, scraped knees and bedtime stories, practically shoving me aside the moment the will was read. It was like a scene from one of those soap operas I used to watch when the kids were napping. The lawyer, a stiff man with a mustache that looked like it belonged in another century, read out Richard's wishes. The company Richard's pride and joy, the one he built from scratch, went straight to our eldest Mark. The mansion, the cars, the vacation home in Aspen. Even the dog Max seemed to have new owners overnight. My daughter Lisa was already redecorating the living room before the funeral flowers had wilted. And me? Well, I got a phone, not even a new one. Mind you, it was Richard's old phone, the one he guarded like it was the crown jewels. And of course, it was locked with a password. I remember sitting there holding that phone in my lap, feeling like I'd just been handed a puzzle with half the pieces missing. Was this some kind of cosmic joke after 50 years of marriage, after all the birthdays, anniversaries and holidays? My husband left me a phone I couldn't even open. I tried to laugh it off, but the sound came out hollow. The kids didn't even notice. They were too busy arguing over who got the convertible and who had to settle for the SUV. That night, I sat in what used to be our bedroom, now apparently the guest room, and stared at the phone. I tried every password I could think of. Our anniversary, the kids' birthdays, the name of our first pet, even password 1 and 23, because, well, you never know nothing. Nada zilch. The phone just sat there, mocking me with its blank screen. I even tried to guess what Richard might have used. He was always a bit of a joker. Maybe it was something silly like, I love chili or go Packers. Still nothing desperate. I called my grandkids into the room. Can you help Grandma unlock this? I asked, holding out the phone like it was a ticking time bomb. They barely looked up from their own screens. Did you try 1234? One of them mumbled. Or maybe his birthday. Another offered, not even pausing their game when I told them I'd already tried those. They just shrugged and went back to whatever it is kids do on TikTok. What is a TikTok anyway? I still don't know. All I see are people dancing in their pajamas and making faces at their phones. The days turned into weeks, and the house that used to be filled with laughter and chaos now felt like a museum I wasn't allowed to touch. Mark started running the company like he'd been born for it, barking orders into his Bluetooth headset and hosting meetings in the dining room. Lisa brought in decorators who painted over my favorite wallpaper and replaced my cozy armchairs with modern monstrosities that looked nice but felt like sitting on a rock. Even Max the dog seemed to have switched loyalties. He used to sleep at my feet every night, but now he followed Lisa around like she was the Queen of England. I tried to keep busy, I baked cookies, I tended the guard. I even tried to join Lisa's yoga class, which, by the way, is not for the faint of heart. My knees still haven't forgiven me, but everywhere I went, I felt like a guest in my own life. The phone became my constant companion. I carried it with me everywhere, hoping that maybe, just maybe, the answer would come to me. Sometimes I'd talk to it, as if Richard could hear me through the glass. Come on, you old goat. I'd whisper, what are you hiding from me? I even tried holding it up to my face, hoping it would recognize me and unlock out of pity. No such luck. One night after another failed attempt at guessing the password, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea and let myself cry. Not just for Richard, but for everything I'd lost. My family, my home, my sense of purpose. I felt invisible, like a ghost haunting the edges of my own story. The phone sat on the table, silent and stubborn, as if daring me to give up. But I didn't. I couldn't. Something inside me, maybe stubbornness, maybe hope, refused to let go. I started writing down every possible password I could think of, filling pages with memories and inside jokes. I watched YouTube tutorials called tech support, even considered taking it to one of those genius bars. At the mall, the last time I went to the mall, I got lost in the parking lot for an hour. But that's another story. Through it all, the phone remained locked, and my children remained distant. But I wasn't ready to give up, not yet. Because if there's one thing I've learned in 70 years, it's that sometimes the answers we're looking for are just waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. And I had a feeling my moment was coming. Let me tell you, nothing makes you feel more invisible than being ignored in your own home. I used to think the worst thing in life was being alone, but I was wrong. It's being surrounded by people who act like you're not even there. The mansion, once filled with the sounds of family laughter, arguments, the clatter of dishes, now echoed with a different kind of noise. My Chili. Dren, Mark and Lisa had taken over every inch of the place. They threw parties that lasted until dawn, invited people I barely recognized, and filled the house with music so loud it rattled the windows. I'd shuffle past in my slippers, clutching Richard's locked phone, and not a single person would look up. Sometimes I wondered if I'd turned invisible overnight, like some kind of senior citizen superhero whose only power was being ignored. The phone became my only companion. I started talking to it like it was Richard himself. "Come on, you old goat. What are you hiding from me?" I'd mutter, shaking it like a magic 8-ball, half expecting it to spit out an answer. I'd sit on the edge of the bed, my bed now relegated to the guest room, and stare at the screen, willing it to unlock. I tried every trick in the book. YouTube tutorials, tech support, even that nice young man at the Apple store who called me Mom one too many times. Honestly, I'm not sure if I wanted to hug him or smack him with my purse. He poked at the phone, tapped a few buttons, and then gave me a sympathetic smile. "Sorry, Mom. Without the password, there's not much we can do." I left the store feeling older than ever, clutching the phone like it was the last piece of Richard I had left. Meanwhile, my children were living it up. Mark strutted around the house like a peacock, barking orders into his phone, making deals, and acting like he'd been running a company his whole life. Lisa redecorated every room, turning my cozy home into something out of a magazine, cold, modern, and completely unrecognizable. She even replaced my favorite floral curtains with something she called minimalist chic. I called it depressing grey. The parties never stopped. Strangers wandered through the halls, laughing and drinking while I hid in the guest room, watching reruns of Golden Girls and eating ice cream straight from the carton. If you ever need comfort, trust me. Dorothy and Rose never let you down. I tried to join in once I put on my nicest dress, fixed my hair, and walked into the living room during one of Lisa's parties. The music was so loud I could feel it in my bones. I smiled, tried to make small talk, but no one seemed interested. Someone handed me a glass of wine, but I could tell they didn't know who I was. I stood there feeling awkward and out of place until Lisa spotted me and gently steered me back toward the hallway. "Mom, why don't you go rest? You look tired." Tired, that's what they always said, as if being tired was a crime or an excuse to be pushed aside. I started to wonder if I was losing my mind. I'd catch myself talking to Richard's photo on the nightstand, asking him what he was thinking when he left me this locked phone. Was it a joke? A test? Or was there something important inside, something he wanted me to find? The not knowing drove me crazy. I'd lie awake at night staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation we'd ever had, searching for clues. Richard always loved puzzles and riddles. Maybe this was his final game, one last challenge for me to solve. Hope became a strange companion. Some days I'd wake up, convinced that today would be the day. I'd crack the code. I'd sit at the kitchen table with a notebook, scribbling down every possible password I could. Think of our favorite vacation spots, the name of the restaurant where we had our first date, the punchline to his favorite joke. I even tried the names of all our pets, living and dead, still nothing. The phone remained stubbornly locked, as if it was laughing at me. Other days the humiliation was too much. I'd hear Mark and Lisa laughing in the next room, making plans for the company, the house, their futures. I felt like a relic, a piece of old furniture they didn't know what to do with. Even Max the dog seemed to have forgotten me. He used to curl up at my feet every night, but now he followed Lisa around, wagging his tail like she was the best thing since sliced bread. I tried to remind myself that I was still here, that I still mattered, but it was hard. The world had moved on without me. And I was left behind, clutching a phone that refused to give up its secrets, but somewhere in the middle of all that humiliation, a tiny spark of hope refused to die. Maybe it was stubbornness, or maybe it was love. I couldn't let go of the idea that Richard had left me, something important. I started to see the phone as a lifeline, a connection to the man I'd loved for 50 years. I talked to it, pleaded with it, even threatened to throw it out the window. Once or twice, don't worry. I never did. I'm not that crazy yet. Ever felt like you're the punchline in your own life? Yeah, me too. But I wasn't ready to give up. Not yet, because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that hope can survive, even in the loneliest places. And sometimes, just sometimes, the universe has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. I never thought I'd make it to 70, and I certainly never imagined I'd spend the day alone, sitting in a house that no longer felt like mine, with nothing but a locked phone for company. There was no party, no cake, not even a half-hearted attempt at a family dinner, just a text from my daughter Lisa, "Happy birthday, Mom." No exclamation point, no emoji, just those 3 words. Gee, thanks, sweetheart. Mark didn't even bother with a text. I suppose he was too busy running the company, or maybe just too busy being important. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd once hosted birthday parties with balloons and laughter, and stared at that stubborn phone. It had become a symbol of everything I'd lost, and everything I still hoped to find. I tried every password, every trick, every desperate plea to the universe, and still it sat there silent and unyielding. I poured myself a cup of tea, the kind Richard used to make for me on cold mornings, and tried not to feel sorry for myself. But it was hard. The house was too quiet, the kind of quiet that presses in on you, reminding you of all the noise that used to fill the space. I glanced at the phone, half expecting it to mock me with it. "Splank screen, you win, Richard," I muttered. You always did love a good mystery. I was about to put it away, to give myself a break from the endless guessing, when suddenly, without warning, the screen lit up. I blinked, thinking maybe I'd imagined it, but no. The phone was awake, and then, as if by magic, it unlocked itself. The home screen appeared bright and clear, as if it had never been locked at all. I stared at it, my heart pounding. Was this real? Had I finally guessed the right password without realizing it? Or was the phone just as tired of being ignored as I was? Before I could process what was happening, the phone started to ring. Not a normal ringtone, but the old-fashioned one Richard used to love. The one that sounded like a rotary phone from the 1950s. My hands shook as I picked it up. I hesitated for a moment, half afraid of what I might hear, but curiosity got the better of me. I swiped to answer, pressing the phone to my ear. "Hello." My voice sounded small, uncertain. There was a pause, and then I heard it. A voice I hadn't heard in months, but one I would have recognized. Anywhere Richard's voice, clear as day, warm and familiar, as if he were sitting right across from me. Happy birthday, love. You finally made it to 70. Now, the real game begins. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Was this a prank? Some elaborate joke my children had cooked up? Or had I finally lost my marbles? Sitting alone in the kitchen, hearing voices from beyond the grave. I looked around, half expecting to see a camera crew jump out and yell, "Surprise!" but there was no one, just me, the phone and Richard's voice echoing in my ear. "The real game," I whispered. My mind racing. "What are you talking about, Richard?" He chuckled, that same low, rumbling laugh that used to make me roll my eyes and smile at the same time. "If you're hearing this, it means you've made it through the hardest part. I know things haven't been easy, and I'm sorry for that, but I needed you to be ready. I needed you to remember who you are, even when everyone else forgot." Felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. "Richard, what is this? How are you? How is this possible?" He continued, his voice steady and calm. "I left you more than a phone, darling. I left you a chance to take back what's yours, to remind our children and yourself of the woman you've always been. You're stronger than you think, and it's time you remembered that." I gripped the phone tighter, my knuckles white. "What do you mean? What am I supposed to do?" "There's a folder on this phone," he said, his tone gentle but firm. "It's called Sunflower, you remember, don't you? That was always our word. Inside you'll find everything you need. The real company records, the trust documents, the letters I wrote for you. It's all there waiting for you. But you have to be the one to open it. You have to decide what comes next." I sat there stunned, the phone pressed to my ear, my mind spinning. Sunflower, of course I remembered. It was the word we used when we wanted to remind each other of home, of hope, of new beginnings. I'd painted sunflowers on the kitchen wall when we first moved in, and Richard had teased me about it for years now. It was the key to everything. But then, Richard's voice grew softer, almost wistful. "I know you feel alone, but you're not. I'm with you always, and I believe in you, even when you don't believe in yourself. This is your story now, love. Make it count." The call ended with a soft click, leaving me in stunned silence. I stared at the phone, my hands trembling, tears streaming down my face. For the first time in months, I felt something shift inside me, a spark of hope, a sense of purpose. Richard had left me a gift. Not just a phone, but a chance to reclaim my life, my family, my future. And as I sat there, the weight of 70 years on my shoulders, I realized that maybe, just maybe, the real game was only beginning. Richard's voice echoed in my mind, long after the call ended, his words wrapping around me like a warm blanket on a cold night. "If you're hearing this, it means you're stronger than you think. I leave to you more than a phone, darling. I left you the keys to everything, the real fortune, the real legacy. It's all in your hands now. Check the folder marked Sunflower on this phone. Trust yourself. And remember, I always believed in you, even when you didn't." I sat there, the phone heavy in my trembling hands, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure the whole house could hear it. Sunflower, that was our secret word. The one we whispered to each other when life got hard, when we needed a reminder that there was always light, even on the darkest days. Suddenly I wasn't just the forgotten widow. The woman shuffled off to the guest room and ignored at her own kitchen table. I was the woman with the power to change everything. I took a deep breath, wiped the tears from my cheeks and opened the phone. My fingers hovered over the screen, almost afraid to look. But curiosity and maybe a little bit of Richard's stubbornness pushed me forward. I found the folder easily tucked away in a corner of the phone, marked with a bright yellow sunflower. I tapped it and the world shifted beneath my feet. Inside were documents, videos, letters more than I could have ever imagined. There were files detailing the true ownership of the company, trust, documents that named me as the primary beneficiary, and letters from Richard, explaining every step he'd taken to protect me, even from beyond the grave. There were even video messages, each one dated for a different milestone: anniversaries, birthdays, and, of course, this very moment I watched the first video. Richard's face filling the screen, his eyes twinkling with that familiar mischief. If you're watching this, love, it means you made it. I knew you would. I'm sorry for the way things turned out, for the loneliness, for the pain, but I needed you to see how strong you are. I needed you to remember that. You're the heart of this family, the glue that holds us all together, the company, the house, the fortune. It was always meant for you. I just had to make sure you believed it too. I laughed. Through my tears, shaking my head at his theatrics, only Richard would turn his will into a treasure hunt. The next few days were a whirlwind. I pored over every document, every letter, every video. I learned things about the company I'd never known. How Richard had quietly shifted shares into my name. How he'd set up trusts to ensure I could never be pushed aside. How he'd left detailed instructions for me to take control if the children ever lost their way. There were even notes about the house, the cars, the accounts, everything I needed to reclaim my life. For the first time in months, I felt alive, I felt powerful, I felt like myself again. But it wasn't just about the money or the company. It was about the message Richard had left me, the faith he'd had in me all along. He knew I'd been lost, that I'd let myself fade into the background, but he also knew I had the strength to step back into the light. I started small. I called a family meeting, my first in years. Mark and Lisa were surprised, to say the least. They shuffled into the living room, expecting another lecture, or maybe a plea for attention. Instead, I handed them copies of the documents, watched their faces pale as they realized what Richard had done. "Mom, what is this?" Mark stammered, his bravado slipping away. "It's the truth," I said, my voice steady. "Your father left everything to me, the company, the house, the fortune. He trusted me to do what's right for all of us." Lisa looked at me, her eyes wide. But why I smiled, feeling a strength I hadn't felt in years, because he knew I wouldn't let this family fall apart, because he believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself. And now it's time for all of us to remember what really matters. It wasn't easy. There were arguments, tears, even a few slammed doors, but slowly things began to change. Mark and Lisa started to see me not as a burden, but as the matriarch I'd always been. I took my place at the head of the table, not just in the boardroom, but in our family. I made decisions, set boundaries, and reminded my children that love and respect were worth more than any fortune. I even started hosting Sunday dinners again, filling the house with laughter and warmth, just like the old days. And as for the company, well, I surprised everyone, including myself. I hired a team of advisors, learned the ropes, and discovered I had a knack for business. I made changes big and small, always guided by Richard's notes and my own intuition. The company thrived, and so did I. I traveled, made new friends, and even took up painting again. Sunflowers, of course. Looking back, I realized Richard's greatest gift wasn't the money or the company. It was the chance to find myself again, to remember that I was never just someone's wife or someone's mother. I was me, strong, capable, and worthy of love and respect. And as I sit here, surrounded by family, friends, and a life I reclaimed for myself, I know that the real legacy Richard left me was the courage to start over, and let me tell you, I did. But that's a story for another day. So, ladies, if you've ever felt invisible, underestimated, or just plain stuck, remember your story isn't over yet. Sometimes, the best chapters come when you least expect them. If you want to hear what happened next, how I turned the tables and found my own happy ending. They thought I was forgotten, discarded like an old chapter. But love leaves traces and secrets. And sometimes the final gift doesn't come wrapped in gold, but in truth waiting to awaken at the right moment. Thank you for watching this video. Share your thoughts in the comments. I truly value every story and every voice. Don't forget to subscribe to Tears and Strength and share this video with your friends.